It is an honor and privilege for me to do this. As you heard, I like to teach. And one good reason is when you teach, you also learn. I just finished teaching doing voluntary teaching at the OLM High School in science. I learned a lot trying to teach them environmental science and health science. You already can guess what the topic is with all these pictures, yeah, antibiotics. And she asked me to add on antibiotic resistance. So that's the core of this presentation. It's just an outline of what I'm going to be covering with you today. So we'll be going over a very brief history of antibiotics, what antibiotics are, different classes of antibiotics, and I just threw this in, are there any other antibiotics, quote, antibiotics, unquote, out there? How antibiotics are being used. Basic, you probably learned bacterial anatomy already, but I just, in case some of us still don't really understand what the bacteria is and its anatomy, so that you can understand how antibiotic works, the different mechanisms antibiotic works on the bacteria. The mechanism of actions where and how the antibiotics work on germs, on the bacteria. And last but not least, it's a very important topic, antibiotic resistance. I'll try to impress on you that it's not a folklore, it is becoming a real story, a reality, antibiotic resistance. And finish up with where are we going in terms of handling bacteria using antibiotics. Okay, history. Who knows about Hippocrates? You heard of Hippocrates? Little bit. If you went through any good medical school, there's a Hippocratic oath that we have to recite when we finish medical school. And it's from this guy who was around, I say 400 BC, but he actually was supposedly born around 340 BC. And he became a physician in Crete. And based on his work, that's what medical schools are using in terms of diagnosing, managing, following patients. Before the year 2000, the year started, the year after Christ, there were no antibiotics used until just a couple centuries ago. And this guy called Eldridge, German chemotherapist, came up with this supposed to be antibiotic, but he called it a chemotherapy used against syphilis. That was in 1909, aspartame. And shortly after that, not shortly, about 2 decades later, Alexander Fleming was the first one to really come up with an antibiotic. That was penicillin. I can't be. See you walking. That was penicillin. And that was the only antibiotic used until about two decades later. The sulfa-based medication antibiotics also were generated. This is a picture of how Fleming isolated penicillin. You know what that picture is? It's molds, fungus. You know when your bread spoils, that's the fungus. Okay, it's called from that Penicillium notatum. That's a species of fungus that Fleming isolated the penicillin from. Later on, a couple decades later, Waxman finally called penicillin antibiotic, and I'll go over what that means. Later slide. The sulfa-based antibiotics soon follow. And in the 1950s to 60s, that's when I was born, the other antibiotics started coming up to what we know today as antibiotics. I just want to show this picture. It's a representation of infectious disease before and after antibiotics came along. And you can see it comes all the way down, and I want to impress on you this part. From 1980 to 2000, what is it doing? Starting to slow up. So that's another good sign for our future. Okay, antibiotics are just a subclass of antimicrobials. Microbials are all the microorganisms, germs, fungi, parasites. So that's what antimicrobials are. And there are different classes of antimicrobials. I just want to quickly go over it with you, but we'll focus on antibiotics the rest of the talk. So antimicrobials are chemicals that are used to kill microorganisms that cause diseases in us. So that's antibiotics. That's the main topic for today. These are the other types of antimicrobials. We have antivirals that kills viruses. You already heard of this pandemic going on, and scientists are desperately looking for different medications to treat the virus, COVID-19. You have antiparasites, like cucus or egg lice, scabies, even antiparasites for intestinal parasites, skin parasites. We have antiprotozoals, the ones against single cell organisms like amoeba, giardia. I'm mentioning these because these are the organisms that affect our health. Oops, sorry. And we have anthelmintics, those are against the worms, intestinal worms. And we have anti-arthropods, arthropotics. Who can guess what that is? What are arthropods? The four-legged crawling organisms. Yeah, like scabies, head lice, and we have antifungals or fungicides against fungus. What is a fungus? Okay, yeah, molds are, mushrooms that you eat are fungi. But that's large macrofungi, but microfungi are the ones that cause sen, the white spot on the skin, ringworm, yeah, and even yeast infection. Okay, those are the fungi. I think it's covering. So it's supposed to say classes of antibiotics. The first one is the class penicillin. That's the one that is hidden. Okay, penicillin. I'll show you a slide later on. You remember at the beginning it was just one type of penicillin. Now there are lots of different types of penicillin depending on the use. Fluoroquinolones. Anybody ever use Cipro? That's a very good quinolone. For these fluoroquinolones are antibiotics that has broad spectrum coverage. Broad spectrum means it covers a whole lot of organisms. Cephalosporins. What is cephalexin? Keflex. And I'm sure some of you already have been treated with Keflex. Cephalosporins have different generations depending on where they work and when they were produced. Here's a slide I'll show you as an example of cephalosporin class. Macrolides, erythromycin, citromax, also broad spectrum coverage. The Clarithromycin is one of those that we use for treating H. pylori. Tetracyclines, doxycyclines, very popular, used locally. Sulfonamides are the Septra, the sulfate-based antibiotics. And lincosamide, clindamycin, also used locally. Vancomycin is a good antibiotic used against resistant bacteria. Aminoglycosides, gentamicin, these are injectables by IV that are used in serious infection, the aminoglycosides. So this is I just want to impress on you the current classes of cephalosporins. So currently there are hundreds of antibiotics, but apparently not enough to treat the upcoming problems. The penicillins. So that question I asked, are there other antibiotics out there in nature? These are the ones that before the real antibiotics came along, people used to use. Basically herbal stuff. Okay. Eating coconut oil has some antibiotic activity. I remember when I was small, there was no antibiotic. My mom used to warm up a teaspoon of coconut oil and pour it in my ear. It worked. Garlic is good for you. What I do with my garlic is I mash 2 cloves, put it in my hot coffee, finish my coffee. When it's over, I chew up the garlic. There's some tricks you can learn. That's a cold and sealed plant. I just want to show you a picture in case you wonder why it's called golden when it's not cold. It's a small herb in the eastern states, in the US and South Canada. In the US, just last year, 160,000 tons, that's 358,400,000 pounds of antibiotics used. And guess what they're spent for? Who can guess? They're not spent on human. They don't spend on people. Spend on livestock. I want to bring that up because that's one of the reasons why antibiotic resistance is coming about. Because when you go buy those chicken, those big leg thigh chicken, they probably have antibiotics because they use antibiotics to make them grow faster, grow bigger. And only 10% are used in human. So 10% are used in human and animal infection. The rest are used to make rich people get richer for profit. That's what I think it is. And that brings on antibiotic resistance, part one of the reason. So this is just a schematic picture of what bacteria. They have that thing surrounding their contents, the cell wall that has cell membrane, and the cytoplasm, the fluidy part that their DNA material or genetic material is floating around in, with ribosomes, things like that, things that help them make their protein and food. Okay? So there are different ways of antibiotic working. One way they help is by being bactericidal. Bactericidal means they kill. The other one is bacteriostatic. That means they just stop the bacteria from reproducing, from growing. And they just stay there and die. So 2 different ways of dealing with bacteria by antibiotics. So stopping cell wall synthesis. Synthesis means to put together. Stopping protein synthesis, so they starve themselves to death. and stopping folic acid synthesis. Folic acid is a very important molecule for bacteria and also for us, but bacteria cannot make it ingest it themselves. They have to fix it in their cytoplasm. We get folic acid from our food, from medications, from other sources. And stopping the genetic materials there, DNA, RNA from forming. These are the ways our antibiotic work. So another cartoon, try to show a little bit more exactly of what I'm talking about. So this is the cell wall, the blue one, and this class of antibiotics, that's where they work. Stop cell wall synthesis. Okay. This one, polymyxin, destroy cell membrane. This is supposed to be a picture of the bacteria DNA, genetic materials. Genetic materials, when they replicate, they split, the two strands, the two sides split, and copies made from wherever the matching amino acids are coming from. And that quinolones like Cipro prevent that from happening. That's how they kill bacteria. Stop the reproduction of that genetic material. This one here, group prevent protein synthesis. What makes a protein? Amino acids. There are 20 different amino acids that our proteins are made up of. And same thing with here. So this group of antibiotics prevent bacteria from forming proteins for their use. This is 50S and 30S, aerobic ribosomes, large ribosome, small ribosome. That's like a factory for a bacteria to make their protein. You know, transfer RNA, messenger RNA, you know those things, yeah? They get the messenger RNA, get the message from the duplicated DNA material, go look for transfer RNA to give the message to bring the amino acids to hook up in this factory to make their protein. So this is, oh, and I forgot, sorry. This is where Septra works. Sulfonamides, trimethoprim. This is how they make their folic acid. Folic acid is TFA that's made from sulfonamides, stop synthesis of dihydrofolic acid from para-aminobenzoic acid, this one. It stops the enzyme that converts para-aminobenzoic acid to difolic acid. And then the other one, trimethoprim, stop synthesis of folic acid from TFA, THFA. Clear? Okay, so I just wanted to show you that after I talked about how antibiotics work. Now, the main one, antibiotic resistance. It is the ability of bacteria and other microorganisms to resist the effectiveness of what they used to be sensitive to. So they become resistant to that antibiotic, not die because of that antibiotic. And I will go over what are the contributing factors. When microorganisms become resistant to antibiotic, they're called superbugs. The first identified superbugs was what is called MRSA. Have you heard of MRSA? Methicillin-resistant Staphylococcus aureus. I don't know why they call it MRSA, but it's still MRSA. Okay? And the next one that is now widely spread resistancy is ciprofloxacin. The period we saw from the early 1900s to now is called the antibiotic era. So I just want to ask this question: is the ending of antibiotic era coming on? Means the post-antibiotic era, is it starting? And remember that curve that I showed you, coming all the way down and starting to creep up? I think that's part of this. This show you where in the world Cipro is becoming resistant. 179 different sites in the world have recorded Cipro resistance. And we use it very commonly here too. I don't think we have the ability to identify the resistance. There's another picture of to impress on you how resistance is coming up. It's all over the world. So I think there is a post-antibiotic era coming up. It's a time when antibiotic resistance after overwhelm the once effective treatment. I think we are beginning that period. Just 2 years ago, CDC reported 2.8 million resistant bacteria diagnosed, killing more than 35,000 deaths. And according to UN statistics, they're anticipating, if the current trend continues, they're anticipating more than 10 million deaths by 2050. I'll be gone by then. It's going to be you guys that have to deal with this. Okay? So, what are the contributing factors bringing on this thing about resistancy? Oh, yeah, so what are the contributing factors? That's the one reason. So inappropriate use, like what we showed you, the use in livestock. They even use it in fish farms. So it's used in these animals that make money for these big companies. The wrong usage, patients don't follow directions. They feel good, they stop taking it. That means that leftover bacteria is still there and will become resistant. So when you become nurses and contact people, make sure you help the educating patients. So they feel better. So, oh, I didn't finish my medicine. I feel good. And patients do share. You have a family, somebody giving an antibiotic home. The other one person start coughing, they start sharing the medicine to contribute to incomplete treatment. It's also a fault of doctors. Some doctors don't check the expiration dates. And when something is expired, it's not going to be guaranteed effectiveness. Some doctors overprescribe, I guess, to make money. Some patients don't really need it, but oh, you have this, you did this. That's why I showed that picture on the bottom right. That child is asking the doctor, do I really need antibiotic? When most upper respiratory tract infections are viral based due to viruses. So some doctors, just because the kid is coughing, having runny nose, little bit fever, go ahead and put them on medications. And hygiene contributes to it. And the problem that is now they're still working on making new antibiotics, but it's not as aggressive as in the past. So not catching up with this problem. The kid is asking the doctor, do I really need Look at that chicken farm. That's where all these antibiotics are going. Okay, so my question is, what does the future hold for us? I like this picture. The cow is asking his friend, pig and chicken, he did a poor human who will have to eat us. They feel sorry for the poor people that will eat them because of drug resistance. I just want to see the arrow, the red arrow there. I just want to show that it's starting to climb. I'm afraid it may be going up like this, like this, like this. And that's where UN say there will be over 10 million people dead by in 30 years. That's their projection. Okay, come to the end. You just quickly went over these few items. Thank you for lending me your ears.
What is that?
Folic acid.
Yeah.
Folic acid is very important in nerve development. It's also in vitamins that our body needs. It's like it's similar to vitamin B. Yeah. Vitamin B is also known as a nerve vitamin. So is curry. Curry is labeled brain food. Not the Japanese curry, the Indian curry. Japanese curry is too salted. They notice that in India, the country India, a lot of the old people, they're getting very old, but their mind is still very sharp. I think they use salt. It's the curcumin in there, the turmeric. That helps.
It says, can I continue to take antibiotics if I miss a day or two?
Try not to miss.
Sometimes
At least finish up the course.
even if you miss
yeah.
those 2 days,
Yeah.
just continue.
Yeah.
Second one, can I take 2 different antibiotics at one time?
It depends on the underlying reason. There are times we use different antibiotics. Like for H. pylori, Helicobacter pylori, we use 2 different antibiotics. Supposedly, remember that picture I showed? They work at different sites. And when we suspect resistance building up, we try to target different sites with more than one antibiotic. That's why Septra, along with Keflex, remember Septra work on the folic acid, Keflex work on the cell wall. They work together to increase the potency. So it depends on what you're trying to do.
How long do you treat a patient with antibiotics? You see some prescription 5 days, 7 days, 10 days, 14 days.
Again, it depends on what you're treating. Most bacterial infection that is not severe, the usual dosing is 7 to 10 days. But infection like in men who have prostatitis, we go longer. It can be up 2 to 3 weeks.
You know, many mothers these days, they put a tablet in oil, local oil. Is that okay? Even though it's expired?
Coconut oil,
Yeah.
expired medication. Yeah, if it's minor, like for small scratch and stuff like that, they're probably okay. Will help, but not for ingestion like that. But I know there are local plants that have been used. Yeah, like guava is a medicinal plant. Guava. That what you call noni. What you call
Yeah,
Wepul. Yeah, Wepul is a medicinal plant throughout the Pacific. Yeah, even I remember growing up, some people use the roots of coconut trees, the young ones, mixing it up with whey pool to treat infection. Garlic has an antioxidant in there. You know what antioxidants are? They're anti-inflammatory chemicals that we get from vegetables, fruits. It has an antioxidant there called allicin that is antibacterial. Yeah. But garlic is good for you. So is black coffee, no cream, no sugar. Black coffee is rich in flavonoids. That is good for your liver, good for your brain. They now say it's also good for your heart. Yeah. Black coffee, no sugar, no
No
cream.
sugar.
Just if you don't like coffee without sugar and cream, just sacrifice about 1.5 weeks to 2 weeks. You will have new taste buds that won't like sugar and cream the next time you do it. Your taste buds change all the time. I'm sure you've burned your tongue before with hot stuff. You feel that grinding sensation. It disappears after a few days because new taste buds came along. Okay? Whatever you want to keep up in terms of taste, sacrifice a few days to a week or so. You'll have new taste buds that won't like that one.
Yes.
How many have heard that diabetes is curable? You heard? Okay. It is curable, so don't believe when people say once you have it, it lasts to the rest of your life. Yeah. I have more than 10 people who no longer have diabetes.
Is it the change of the diet?
Yes, it's a lifestyle. All the NCTs are lifestyle diseases. If you do 360 degrees turnaround, you can fix it. When it's really bad, we use medicine to help. Okay?
How about those that are like already like type 2 diabetes, they can, if they were to switch their lifestyle?
Type 1 you cannot reverse
Okay.
because you need insulin.
Okay.
It's type 2 that I'm talking about.